I am John Kaiser. I am at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver on September 15th, 2017. I am speaking with Stefan Spears, CEO of Inventus Mining Corp. Stefan, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, John.
In your presentation today, you talked about a very important test that you are undertaking. You have a $1 million budget to take a 1,000-ton bulk sample and drill some more holes. Meanwhile, Novo on its Purdy's Reward project is gearing up to spend $2 million a month trying to solve this same problem of how do you measure gold in a conglomerate, nuggety gold in a conglomerate bed. How far do you think this particular program, which comes from a decade of experience with different groups, Endurance Gold for a while, and then Inventus, which you joined in 2017. The program that you are doing now, to what extent is it more focused and likely to deliver what the prior year's exploration efforts did not deliver?
Well, it's an excellent question. I think that there's been a lot of drilling done at Pardo, and part of the frustration with the asset was that it was inconsistent. And we realized that the larger sample that we take, generally the better grade we get and the more consistent result. So bulk sampling is kind of the logical next step when you think, I've increased the sample size from a small diameter core to a larger core. I've sampled the whole thing. I've done bulk assay methods. Now I have a permit in place to take 1,000 tons. If we mine that and we compare it to the drill results that we received, we should have a fairly good idea of what the correspondence is between this irregular drilling and what we find as total contained metals. So I look at it as a bit of a turning point. We've had limitations that haven't enabled us to do the bulk sample up until now. When we were having disputes with our joint venture partner, they were very much opposed to doing a bulk sample. And that's why we kind of pivoted and decided to do more drilling. I think the drilling that we did over the course of 2017 was very useful and very good because it gave us a lot more confidence going into the bulk sample. And the results were quite good because we had modified methods for assaying and sampling. We were getting more consistent results. So I think it's a progression in that direction. And actually we've learned from Quentin Henning and Novo's experience at Beaton's Creek quite a bit because they're just about 2 years ahead of us in terms of doing the drilling, the test mining, and seeing how everything shakes out.
Now you mentioned that in the Pardo project that the conglomerate beds are pretty much flat-lying. There may have been some up and down local displacement from some sort of block faulting, but in terms of its orientation, it's flat-lying over fairly big distance. Is that simply a coincidence of regional tilting that may have flattened what was at once a basin that sloped, say, eastwards, or is this pretty much the original orientation of the basin?
So our interpretation is that the area that we've had the most intense exploration is what we call the mid-fan. So that's a point at which this alluvial delta is relatively flat. And so that's why we see the flat orientation. Now, as that fan goes out deeper into the basin, it drifts lower and it does start to dip and gets quite deep. And that's what you expect as you're getting out into deeper water and you're getting more thinner layers interspersed with sand. So it fits the model. And so we would expect it to be relatively flat. It seems to have stayed in generally its orientation, but it has been jostled a bit over the last 2 billion years.
Mm-hmm. It being flat-lying, it should be fairly easy to delineate with shallow drilling. You treat it almost like a diamondiferous kimberlite dike where you do your petrography and say, yep, this is the conglomerate bed. It is here, 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 and there. And have you taken into consideration what Novo is also considering for its Purdy's Reward and Comet Well project, which is to take large diameter drills in the way they do with a kimberlite dike, and sure you have to go through maybe 10 meters of overburden or something like that, but then you get your 2 to 4 ton, 5 ton kimberlite or conglomerate bed sample that you process through some sort of sorting machine similar to the Steiner. Have you looked at this stage, which is of course very expensive and you don't have the budget now, but which, if this program is successful in boosting confidence about this project, have you looked at a scenario where if a lot of money came in the door, where you could pursue this type of bulk sampling, systematic grid-based bulk sampling strategy?
So we know that the larger sample we take, the better in terms of the scientific value that it gives us. We have the luxury, I guess, of being able to take at surface bulk samples from a whole bunch of different areas very easily because we have a lot of outcrop and because the zones are fairly flat lying. If we get to the point where we exhaust all of those areas, so we've tested all of those areas and we've done sort of mini bulk samples to larger bulk samples on those areas that are exposed, then I can see a point where we need to, kind of think about collecting samples from deeper. However, we have no reason to think that a bulk sample from here will behave any differently than a bulk sample from there. And so I think the better chance for us is to figure out how, what the correspondence is between the results that you get in a drill hole and how that relates to the actual contained metal in a volume of material. And that's where we're kind of trying to learn the first step with the existing bulk sample. And then I expect to take another series of bulk samples, probably 60 to 100,000 tons in the next phase if it's successful, which is essentially test mining. But that will give us all the information we need to know about the deposit.
In your presentation, you showed that you have about 2.7 square kilometers of these conglomerate beds within that window that's exposed on Pardo. What sort of tonnage potential do you see this entire system representing within what you have? In diamonds, we call it a target for future exploration. What sort of tonnage footprint are you looking at here that you believe to be mineralized conglomerate bed?
So the area that we've drilled in detail with 50 by 50 meter grid drilling, we've calculated contains about 1.7 million tons. And that's basically a third of a square kilometer times a thickness of about 1.8 meters is the average thickness in those drill holes. And so if you looked at the 2.7 square kilometer number and you used the same 1.8 meter thickness, that would give you about 13 million tons.
And what do you see as the sort of minimum grade, average grade you want to see as a sort of a go signal for we need to go do an economic study? It's kind of difficult to answer because I haven't done the arithmetic on what all the mining costs and so forth would be. I don't think that I would be overjoyed if it was as low as 2 grams, but I'd be getting pretty happy if it was looked at like around 4 grams. And the potential for it to be quite a bit higher than that exists, and I would be ecstatic if it was north of 6 grams. Well, for Beaton's Creek, they raised $18 million based on 2.7 gram per ton or so grade. So if you get that 4 gram per ton or 2 or so grade, I think you'll be able to go to that next level. Thank you, Stefan. Right. This is John Kaiser, and I've been speaking with Stefan Spears at the Metals Investor Forum in Vancouver.